Hello, good geeks of the world. I'm back in front of my bookshelves, and that means it's time, of course, for another Nerdventure. So come with me as we nerd-splore, if you will. If you won't, come along anyway. This particular book, Alias, by Brian Michael Bendis and Michael Gaydos, the Michaels and Michaels. This copy I have is from the 2014 reprint, I believe, of the Omnibus, which collects the entire Alias run that Brian Michael Bendis wrote between 2001 and 2004 on this character, Jessica Jones. This reprinting is still in print, I believe, as of a couple weeks ago at least. It's a $99 price tag for the cover, but you can get that easily 40% off, or $30 if you want to do Amazon shipping. But if you go to IST in stock trades, you can get this for almost half off cover, and it is totally worth picking up, considering that the Netflix series, Alias, also known as Jessica Jones, finally renamed to just Jessica Jones, is going to be coming out, Netflix confirmed, this July in the fourth quarter of 2015. So now is a great time to hop onto this. Hopefully it stays in print through that show's release, but if not, please pick this up now before it's too late. This is a really nice book. You can see the cover, which, like I said, has the two different images of Jessica, the spine, the back, and if we take off the dust jacket, Alias right on the front in this kind of faux rubberized, I don't really know how to describe it, texturized material that Marvel has been using in their more recent omnibus, however the multiple of omnibuses. And on the back you can see a picture of the lead character, Jessica herself. The book itself has really nice binding. It's not super thick. You can see right through the eye hole there. It's not a super thick volume. It's only 29 issues, 1 through 28 of the original Alias series, as well as a what if one-shot that explores sort of this alternate possibilities that Jessica Jones could have gone through. So let's dive right into this bad boy. As the dust jacket shows, this is actually a Marvel Max series with explicit content. Like I said, it was published between 2001 and 4. The only way that this could be more early 2000s if it was explicit without the E, which would make me love it even more. But this is one of their Max line, of which the other one is The Punisher that is most well known. There were a number of other Max books. And this was something that Marvel did around 2001, around the turn of the millennium, to break away from the Comics Code Authority, which is actually a totally different episode in and of itself, the history of the Comics Code. This particular book was the first Max book released. It starts ever so eloquently on the very first page with "fuck," right? So it's obviously meant for mature readers. Like I said, in 2001, Marvel ditched the Comics Code Authority, and they had started printing their own guidelines to age content. So there were all ages, sort of younger readers, teens, teen pluses, mature, and then the Max imprint, which is 18 and older, and is explicit, and is meant to be. And this book is exactly that. It's a very gritty, real-world take. It's a mostly dialogue-driven book on the Marvel Universe, specifically focusing around this character, Jessica Jones, who was created by Brian Michael Bendis in 2001 and retconned into the Avengers and into the sort of superhero legacy of Marvel in the Silver Age, which is done really interestingly in here. She is not an old character. She wasn't around in the 60s and 70s. She was created for this book specifically, but in the book itself, it inserts her into the history of Marvel's earlier years, and it kind of plays around with why you might not know her or why she's been hiding in the shadows since that time. And that's one of the most brilliant ways that he sort of unveils this mystery and inserts this character that wasn't there into a pretty natural feeling place in the Marvel Universe. Genre-wise, this book is a crime noir style private eye book. It centers around Jessica solving these crimes with sort of a focus on supernatural abilities or superhero powers. She's kind of like a private investigator for normal people who have been tied up into superhero lives. And so a lot of this series deals with the baggage that she carries from being an ex-superhero and the baggage that the Marvel Universe generates in general, which is something that wasn't touched on that much, I don't believe, before Bendis started writing this. It's kind of the way that having heroes present in this world affects the media and affects the people that are their fans, and affects the people that are close to them, and affects the people that they end up saving or interacting with. Somebody's tapping into it and showing from a street level the way that the people have to cope with these problems or how superheroes work in this world. And Jessica Jones is one hell of an awesome character. I absolutely love her. She's a hard drinking, hard swearing, sleeps with who she wants, does what she wants kind of private eye character in this, and it's really great. It's extremely well written. She comes off as really genuine and genuinely messed up, but at the same time you sort of can really empathize with a lot of the things that she's going through and a lot of the things that she's tried to bury about her past. It really feels like a believable story, you know, as believable as a superhero story could be. It feels like something that a normal person would go through. You know, you can't all be the Captain Americas, inspire everybody. You know, somebody has to be the one who quits, who gives up, who says that's enough, who throws in the towel, right? There has to be somebody like that in this universe, and Jessica is that person. Less so than she thinks she is at the beginning of the book, but man, it really comes across as genuine and human, the way that Michael Bendis writes her and makes you feel like this is exactly what maybe would happen to me if I had superpowers, or somebody that I knew if they had superpowers, maybe they wouldn't be the one that saved the world. Maybe they would be the one that fucked up and then had to, you know, deal with that for the rest of their lives. And it's a really, really great exploration of that problem. So this is a very dialogue-heavy book. It is very wordy. It is a crime procedural, and there's a lot of text. I mean, you have to want to read a novel, basically, to read this book. And it's totally worth it because the art complements that sort of verbose style in a really brilliant, brilliant way. The artist for most of this, like I said, is Michael Gaydos, and his panel layouts are incredible. They're genius. They don't take up the entire page often. There's a lot of blank space left out. But for example, this page, you can see, it highlights the things that Jessica is actually seeing and looking at, right? What the pieces that she picks up of this woman who's coming into her office. And there's a lot of blank space. It's not exactly laid out in a traditional grid format, but it allows you to really get into Jessica's brain and see exactly what she's picking apart in the people that she meets. Or something like this, where you have these dialogue exchanges that spread. It's a double page of dialogue, right? When you think about splash pages from something like John Carter, The Warlord of Mars, right, or these older style Star Wars thing, you think of the splash page of this huge crazy action scene, right, that somebody would have drawn. They had the balls in this series to do a splash double page of just two heads talking, and it's great. Michael Gaydos is a wizard of expressions, and if you look at a lot of this, and he actually talks about, in the back matter of this book, he shows a lot of the sketches that he was doing to capture Jessica. He also shows that he worked from reference a lot, which is something that, you know, it's some people really swear by, some people think is terrible, depending on who you ask as a comic book artist. But you can definitely tell that he used these pictures of different people that he knew, and he worked from these references, and it really, really gave the story and his art a really believable conversational tone to it. It's one of the better just page-to-page dialogue-driven art styles that I've ever seen. It really, really sucks you in and keeps you going. It actually mostly reminds me, it's so realistic, of something like Scanner Darkly or Waking Life, the Richard Linklater films. If you're familiar with rotoscoping, where there's a filmed scene that's filmed in real life and then is colored over or done over with sort of an animation style, it sort of looks like that. It looks almost like these, you know, real-to-life photos or film that he then sort of goes over and animates. Obviously it's not. It's a penciled piece of comic book work of sequential art. But the way he does it is incredible. Highly, highly recommended for the art alone. But what really takes it to a whole nother level is that there's multiple artists involved in this book. There's a few flashback sequences which are drawn by Mark Begley, who also did work with Bendis on Amazing Spider-Man. And I don't care for his art style. I don't like it particularly. The people are very strangely proportioned, and it's just not. It's not really for me. But it does serve a great purpose in this particular book. It shows sort of the flashbacks to when Jessica was a superhero, and it differentiates the art style enough for you to realize what's going on and what Bendis is trying to tell you. Also, the covers are done by David Mack of Kabuki fame, known for his collage, abstract, painted art style. And he does a really nice job on the covers of sort of showing you pieces of the story, and the covers start to make more sense as you read the book. Issue 5, for example, which has this kind of collage-style art on it, and eventually it becomes clear what the covers are. I'm not going to spoil it, but they are tied into the story more than you realized, and so it becomes clear what the covers are, how it relates to Jessica and the people that she is investigating, and it's really, really, really well done. So what the heck is actually in this book? This book is basically 4 trade paperbacks collected, I think is how it's sold if you buy the individual books. It's 4 of them, and there's largely, that makes sense because there's 4 overarching plots throughout the series. The first plot deals with Jessica and the sort of ramifications of this secret tape that gets released, which involves bigger name superheroes, you know, not to spoil anything again, but it does a really good job of showing sort of the crossfire that you can be drawn into getting involved with these big superheroes, and you can't really control where it goes, who manipulates you as a result of that. And so the first plot does a really great job of that. The second plot is also interesting. It sort of delves really deeply into the psychosis that's caused by being a sidekick character, which is something that I think has probably been done before with, like, I could think of like the Batman and Robin sort of duo team is one that I know has been played with a lot. But it delves into Jessica investigating this man and his claims to be sort of this sidekick character, and what he did and how he feels about it and how it's ruined his life, and sort of the search for him. It's really, really interesting. It doesn't end on a sort of a big, huge, satisfying conclusion. It sort of leaves you with this feeling of like, who was telling the truth? Was he telling the truth? Was it real or not? And like, is he messed up in this kind of like psychological way that he's projecting all of these things, the sidekick that is? And it's a really, really awesome and down-to-earth exploration. The third arc is this sort of search through small-town America for a mutant superpowered character, and it sort of has a little bit of True Detective kind of vibe, with like this kind of things going on underneath the current that you can't really see, but kind of like all the people in the town having this unspoken sort of odd reservations about talking about this case. It's really awesome. It's also very interesting because it goes into the mutant sort of side of things, which is, and discrimination related to mutants, which is something that the X-Men has touched on and was sort of made in the very beginning by Stan Lee in the 60s to touch on that, you know, discrimination factor of something that you're born with, some innate sort of superpower that you have. And it's awesome to see Bendis give his own spin on it, on the way that people treat these mutants. That segues into probably my favorite arc of this book, which deals with kind of superhero leeches or groupies. I don't know what you want to call it. People that have this sort of like actual sexual affinity to a certain extent, but to superheroes, and kind of the way that they follow them around and sort of use them to live out these like sick fantasies or use them for their own means. It has some scenes in here that are truly disturbing and really, really good. Like I got to them, I remember when I was reading it, and I got to them and I was just flipping through it, and it just gets twisted, but still in this way that you can believe it and go along with the ride. It's incredible. And finally, it ends with an arc about Kilgrave the Purple Man, which if you're familiar with some of the earlier Daredevil stories, I believe, he's this man who is all purple through some chemical accident or experiment, and through his pheromones can release these controlling toxins into the air, which like make you do whatever he wants you to do. And that actually is basically the origin story of Jessica Jones, tied in with the modern sort of Purple Man Kilgrave stuff. And it's really, really well done. By the end of the 28th issue, building up to the end of the series, you figure out what exactly happened to Jessica that was so traumatic and that changed her in such a way. And you see this sort of intersection that she hits, this point where she has a choice to make about how she's going to deal with the ramifications of this event in her past. and she goes down one particular self-destructive road to lead to where she gets in this book. And then what's great is that the book ends, the last issue is the what if story, and it actually explores what happens if she took the other choice. If she didn't go down this sort of self-destructive and kind of running away from the problems and instead embraced these problems that she had in her past, where would she have ended up? And it's told in this really great way. It flashes back and forth between Jessica sort of at the end of this story, listening to people talk about what she could have been and sort of commenting on it. It's just really brilliant. It's really, really well done. Well, I love the series completely, unabashedly. I think it's extremely well done. I also recognize it is not necessarily for everyone. It is explicit. It is a Marvel Max imprint book, and it does not hold any punches. It doesn't sort of force violence down your throat or feel like the language is, vulgar for the sake of vulgarity. It really feels to me, I mean, I don't have the cleanest mouth in the world, but it feels to me like a way I would talk or somebody that I know would talk. It's realistically vulgar, or it doesn't, pull punches to fit within some comic book world. It also, like I said, you have to be a reader. In the art, a lot of times, it will hold the same shots. It'll hold the same frame for a long time. I think that's really, really cool. It's really interesting. It's almost like a film technique, sort of. It gives this impression of a long shot and a lot of dialogue going in. But if you are somebody who looks for a lot of action in panel to panel, or you're not exactly into art that sort of breaks out of the standard grids, it might not be for you. But heck, expand your horizons. Read this shit, okay? It's amazing. Highly, highly recommended. Absolutely pick it up if you can get it for anywhere between, $60 or under, hopefully. Somewhere around there. You should 100% read it. It's not a super long read, but it is absorbing, page-turning, the art, everything. It just really, really kicks ass. Go out and read it. Read it before the Netflix series. Get excited for the Netflix series. Get excited for the Defenders crossover eventually. And I'll see you guys on our next Nerdventure. Have a good one.